Well, thank you, and happy Sabbath to everybody. It's wonderful to see you all. I personally am glad for 70 degree weather and the cool nights. I've had the windows open and the fan on and the fresh air coming in. It's been wonderful. Welcome to everybody out there who's joining us on Zoom. I hope you're doing well also. Well, many times in life, we all have a picture in our mind of what we perceive to fit a definition or image of a word that we hear, or maybe a title. For example, I'd like you all to just kind of close your eyes, and when I say the word tree, picture that. Well, what comes to your mind? Did a tall woody thing with leaves come to your mind? Maybe you were a little more specific in that. Maybe you pictured a giant redwood. How about a red oak? Or maybe a red maple? How about a sycamore tree? These are a few examples of some really nice trees. Now, did any of you picture a pawpaw, a dogwood, a redbud, a musclewood, or a hop hornbeam? You know, these are trees also, but they're smaller trees. They grow in the understory of other trees that tower over them. Many times, if one of these trees get 10 to 15 feet tall, they're very big. Now let's try another word association. When I say the words ministered before the Lord, do you have an image of someone that comes into your mind? Did you picture Greg Thomas or Andy Lee or maybe another person? Let's turn to 1 Samuel chapter 2. Maybe when you thought of the words ministered into the Lord, this scripture came to mind. 1 Samuel 2 in verse 18. Now Samuel was ministering before the Lord as a boy, wearing a linen ephod. His mother would make him a little robe and bring it to him from year to year when she would come up with him and her husband to offer a sacrifice. Now again, here's the image. Samuel is a little boy. She made him a little ephod, so it's not something like he's probably not like 16, 17, almost a grown man. She's making something special, something small. Now here, let's be clear, the word minister is Hebrew word 833:4, sharath. And this word means figuratively to contribute to, minister unto, to serve, or to wait upon. This is not describing Samuel as an ordained elder or priest yet, but it's simply saying, as a small boy, Samuel served or waited upon the Lord. Now earlier in 1 Samuel 1, verse 22, it mentions here that Hannah, after she had weaned Samuel, so he was probably 3 to 4 years old during this time, he was taken and given to Eli the priest to serve the Lord, and he started his formal education. She dedicated Samuel to the Lord. The title for today is Youth Serving the Lord. So let's go to another example. Let's go to 2 Chronicles in chapter 34. 2 Chronicles chapter 34, verses 1 through 8. You can also find this chronicled. It's Josiah in 2 Kings 22, verse 1 through 13. But we're going to stay in 2 Chronicles. Now here I'm going to quickly read through this, and then we're going to highlight a couple things here. Josiah was 8 years old when he became king, and he reigned 31 years in Jerusalem. He did right in the sight of the Lord and walked in the ways of his father David and did not turn aside to the right or to the left. For in the 8th year of his reign, while he was still a youth, he began to seek the God of his father David, and in the 12th year he began to purge Judah and Jerusalem of the high places. They tore down the altars. We're going to kind of summarize this. Any sort of pagan worship, Josiah headed up removing this from the temple and from Israel. He also tore down the altars of the Asherim, all these different things. He began to repair the temple. So think about this for a second. Again, in verse 1, it states here, at 8 years old, he became king. And now I'm sure as an 8-year-old person, he wasn't just jumping in the, already gung-ho and knew exactly what to do. He had people who were kind of guiding him and leading him. But in his 8th year, so he was 16 years old, he began to seek the Lord. At 20 years old, he was purging Judah. And at 26 years old, he was repairing the house of the Lord. They actually found the book of the law while repairing it. And he instituted the Passover and different things. Now, we don't have time here to review the different biblical examples of youth that served or ministered to God. But with this information in mind, can we consider the following? Are we inspiring the next Josiah? As parents, grandparents, aunts and uncles, congregations, ministers and churches, are we raising, teaching, fostering, inspiring, enabling our youth to serve or minister unto the Lord? Do we have anybody here that's 8 years old? Not you. All right, we have one back here. How about a little bit younger than 8? We have one over here. All right. How about between the ages of 8 and 16? How many do we have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 people. How about 16 to 20? We have 2. These are all ages. Think of this, that Josiah was starting to do his work. So, with this in mind, as parents and congregations, we're going to go through the 3 points. We're going to premise this on Deuteronomy 6, verse 4. And here, I might as well turn to it. Here, God is instructing. In verse 4, it says, "Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one." He's talking to the whole congregation of Israel, not just parents, the whole congregation. And then we jump down to verse 6. It says, "These words which I am commanding you today shall be on your heart. You shall teach them diligently to your sons, and talk of them when you sit in your house, and when you walk by the way, and when you lie down, and when you rise up." Here God is instructing the entire nation the importance of diligently teaching children God's way. He also instructs the timing of this. When you sit down in your house, your leisure time, when you're walking to and fro, you're going places, when you rise up in the morning, and when you lie down and go to sleep. To do these things, we must be very purposeful in what we do and say. So what are some action items that we can do as parents, grandparents, congregations, churches, to foster and inspire and enable our youth to serve the Lord? Number 1. Now this one is going to be specific to family members. This one, the parent, maybe the grandparent, maybe an aunt and uncle, do our best to not let TV, YouTube, TikTok, Facebook, music, maybe Disney, and even sadly Sesame Street, they're starting to bring things slowly into these shows. Do not let them be the educators of our children. Take control of the TV, the computer, and the cell phone use. Limit their use. They don't need to be, you don't need these as babysitters, because they will, and they'll teach them. If you're driving somewhere, they don't have to watch a TV show while they're driving. Be careful of the music that we play to them. Different styles of music aren't wrong, but being careful and knowing the words of these songs. All of these media outlets are indoctrinating children and us adults. They're sending a message. If viewed and listened to over and over again, our children or we will fall prey to it. Now, there's an author that has a quote that I like. I haven't read his book, so I can't vouch for the book. His name is Vodi Bakum Jr., and he wrote Family-Driven Faith, Doing What It Takes to Raise Sons and Daughters Who Walk with God. And here's the quote: "We cannot continue to send our children to Caesar for their education and be surprised when they come home as Romans." So again, how the media that is entertaining our children is going to be teaching them. Number 2, start reading to, praying with, and singing hymns to our children as infants and as they continue to grow. As I see my miracle of a grandson, I watch him and he's sitting there and he's watching, observing, he's looking around at what you're doing. If I'm sitting down with him to calm him down, I'll sing to him and he's looking directly at me when I'm singing to him. He's only 10 months old and he's absorbing everything that's around him like a sponge. Expecting parents, grandparents, congregations, and churches can all take part of this. When they are smaller, we may be doing all the praying and reading and singing hymns, but do it. Make sure they observe and hear us doing these things. As our children grow, let them take part in the praying, reading, and teaching to them to sing. One very important aspect of teaching is teaching them to teach. Teaching is not just a lecture, a sermon, or reading. It involves discussion and teaching that student to teach other people. It's interactive. Remember Deuteronomy when it talked about to do this. Point number 3, and lastly, it's include our children in ministering to the Lord. Again, remember, minister, this isn't being an ordained elder. They're not replacing that. We're not doing that. But it means to minister unto, to serve, or to wait upon. This, again, is for parents, grandparents, congregations, and churches. We need to make sure that we're giving our youth the opportunity to serve the Lord our God. Encourage them and inspire them, enable them, and foster them to do so. We need to make sure that we're giving them the opportunities to be serving. At home, this may be having our children say the prayers before breakfast or dinner, praying with them in the morning or evening, maybe having a biblical talk and helping them to memorize a scripture. This could be making sure and helping our children serve other people. At church, this could be starting with the children opening, closing at Sabbath school prayer. I haven't been in there, but I'm sure that there's some of these things being done. It could be with them singing or playing special music during services. How about when the youth are old enough, maybe reading a short scripture during the service? As their experience grows, many congregations have had youth services, youth-oriented services, where the young teens take part in the church services where appropriate, or helping with different aspects of church. Maybe they don't want them helping with sound back there, but some places where the kids are showing responsibility and they can handle those things, you'd be surprised what they can do. Maybe it's helping with food or cleanup, and if we get chairs and the chairs need rearranged each week, or handing out hymnals, things like that. How about helping them serve the elderly in our congregation? Do we sit down with these younger people and so they're comfortable with us as the older people in the church, or do we only sit with our people our age? So make them feel comfortable in doing that. In closing, let's make sure that we have purpose in our lives, teaching our children about the Almighty Father and His Son, Jesus Christ. And honestly, it doesn't just end with us teaching. The youth have to take a responsibility. At some point, Josiah developed that relationship on his own as a 16-year-old kid. So youth, between the ages of 8 and 16 and 20, take that upon yourselves also. Grasp hold of that if you can. So again, in closing, let's give them the ability and the opportunity to be the next Samuel, Josiah, Timothy. We can do this by not letting media raise our children, being active and praying with and reading to and singing with them as early as possible. And in 3, including them in ministering or serving the Lord at home and at church.